Continuing from the previous episode 557. Chapter 1486. Tiangang Hall. An existence like the Dragon Emperor of the ancient Void Dragon tribe was an extremely mysterious existence in the eyes of many people. Of course, even an ordinary ancient Dragon tribe member was legendary to some people. After all, the ancient Void Dragon tribe rarely came to the Central Plains. The ancient Void Dragon tribe was as mysterious and powerful as those ancient clans in the hearts of many people. The Dragon Emperor within the tribe was an existence like the clan head of the Gu clan or the Hun clan. This expert was someone even people as strong as Ancestor Hu Yun and the First Elder of the Pill Tower had never met. Hence, they could not hide the shock that surged onto their faces after they heard that Zi Yan was actually the legendary Dragon Emperor. Ha! It is unexpected that Lady Zi Yan holds such an identity. This elderly self was indeed a little blind back then. Yao Lao was startled by Xiao Yan's words. He only recovered a moment later before he solemnly cupped his hands and laughed. Zi Yan felt a little unnatural by Yao Lao's politeness. She was aware that Xiao Yan viewed Yao Lao like a father. She didn't want to display the so-called Dragon Emperor airs in front of him. Teacher, there is no need to be overly polite. You can simply treat her like the little girl in the past. Xiao Yan was also aware of Zi Yan's thoughts. He smiled and continued, since teacher has made this suggestion earlier, I think that you have already chosen a branch hall to attack, right? Yao Lao's expression was a little grave upon returning to this topic. He said, after starting our full-scale investigation of the Hall of Souls, we have managed to gather a lot of information. The Hall of Souls has many branch halls in the Central Plains. There are 24 of them that are more important. The Hall of Souls calls them the Disha Halls. The branch hall that I had been imprisoned in back then was one of these Disha Halls. Disha Halls. Xiao Yan slightly nodded. This was something he had never heard about. Above the Disha Halls are the Tiangang Hall. These halls are more important to the Hall of Souls. Yao Lao slowly said, the Tiangang Hall. Are divided into heaven, earth, and man. The Heaven Hall is the headquarters of the Hall of Souls. We are currently unaware of its location. This time around, our target is the Man Hall among the Tiangang Hall. Man Hall, Xiao Yan muttered and asked. What is the strength of the Man Hall like? The Earth Hall is managed by the Deputy Hall Chief while the Man Hall is managed by the First and Second Tianzun. Of course, we must not eliminate the possibility that the Hall of Souls has strengthened its defenses. Yao Lao replied, that third Tianzun died in my hands back then. The second Tianzun, Saint Gu, is only a high-level Ban Sheng. I will not need to fear him if we meet again. Looks like we can take down this Man Hall. Xiao Yan faintly smiled. His smile was a little dark and dense. He truly hated the Hall of Souls. He had nearly died to these bastards many times over the years, but he had grown now. Perhaps, he should take the initiative to collect a little of the old debt. Leave this matter of destroying the Man Hall to me. The Alliance still need experts to guard it to protect against any attempt by the Hall of Souls to do the same to us. Hence, I hope that Ancestor Hu Yun and the rest will guard this place. Xiao Yan's eyes shifted to Ancestor Hu Yun and the First Elder from the Pill Tower as he spoke. I shall accompany you. The location of the Man Hall is quite secretive. It would be difficult to find even if one has a map. Yao Lao hesitated before he added, all right. Xiao Yan hesitated upon hearing Yao Lao's statement before nodding. He had Zi Yan, a 4-star Do Sheng, beside him. There were not many experts within the Central Plains who could threaten them. Even the Hall Chief of the Hall of Souls would not be able to easily defeat Zi Yan and take all of their lives. In that case, all of you should rest for a few days. After that, we will head to the Man Hall. Yao Lao fondled his beard. A fierce glint flashed through his eyes. He and Xiao Yan had to hide when they had been pursued by the Hall of Souls. Now, they were determined to cease hiding. How could their hearts feel comfortable if they did not take revenge 100 times over? Daddy. Xiao Yan looked at little Xiao Xiao, who was stepping through the air as she joyously ran toward him. He hurriedly stepped forward and hugged that little figure who had come flying over. A faint warmth spread from his heart. Daddy, where is Mummy? Little Xiao Xiao's large black eyes looked behind Xiao Yan. She looked in all directions in an attempt to find Kai Lin. Ha! Mummy is still training. She will return to little Xiao Xiao once she completes her training. Xiao Yan explained with a smile. He hugged little Xiao Xiao while an exclamation was suddenly emitted from his mouth. He discovered that the vast and mighty energy that had randomly been flowing within little Xiao Xiao's body had calmed down. The energy also vaguely flowed and changed according to her desire. Xiao Xiao's training talent is extremely great. Within half a year, she is already able to control the energy within her body. She can be considered a genuine elite Dozong. Yao Lao by the side smiled and remarked, "Dozong." Xiao Yan rubbed Xiao Xiao's small head. He involuntarily let out a bitter laugh. Back then, he had to train and experience many difficulties just to reach the Dozong class. In the end, Xiao Xiao did not need to do anything as she easily stepped to this level. Thinking about this really caused one to sigh. Moreover, she is extremely interested in pill refinement. I'm planning to wait for her to become a little older before teaching her the flame mantra. After which, I will help her look for a heavenly flame and slowly familiarize her with it. The gaze that Yao Lao used to look at Xiao Xiao was extremely doting as he laughed. You really dote on her too much. Xiao Yan was helpless. He handed Xiao Xiao in his embrace to the curious Zi Yan behind him. They stared at each other while Xiao Yan clenched his hand and a jade bottle appeared in it. There was a drop of golden liquid floating inside the bottle. An extremely frightening ripple was vaguely emitted from it. What is this? Yao Lao's expression was slightly altered upon seeing the blood within the jade bottle. He could sense the terrifying strength within it. The essence blood left behind by an expert with half a step in the Do D class. Xiao Yan smiled. He glanced at Yao Lao and said, "If teacher consumes it, it should be possible for you to swiftly reach the first star of the Do Sheng class." Yao Lao carefully received the jade bottle. He flipped the jade bottle around and observed it for a long time. He was a little hesitant. This thing was far too precious, and it would benefit Xiao Yan more. I have already consumed it. It will not do much if I consume it again. Teacher should train for the next few days. We will head to the Man Hall after you complete your training, and then we will eliminate it from the Central Plains. Xiao Yan smiled. He turned around and pulled both Zi Yan and Xiao Xiao out of the hall before Yao Lao could utter another word. Yao Lao stared at Xiao Yan's back. He let out a bitter laugh a moment later. After which, he clenched the jade bottle in his hand. A warmth filled his heart. Xiao Yan remained in the Falling Star Pavilion the next few days. Having nothing to do, he began to pass on some of his Do skills to Xiao Xiao. The shocking talent that she displayed caused Xiao Yan to feel completely astounded for the first time. It was likely that only she could be described as a true genius. His so-called young genius title back in Wutan City was insignificant when compared to the current Xiao Xiao. Xiao Yan properly enjoyed the feeling of being a father for 5 days. That feeling would cause him to occasionally feel like he truly matured. His current self was no longer that reckless tender youth from back then. Instead, he was a true giant-like existence. Yao Lao, who had been in a retreat, finally appeared in front of Xiao Yan on the 6th day. Yao Lao's overflowing aura let Xiao Yan know that he had broken through to the first star of the Do Sheng class. Xiao Yan was not surprised by Yao Lao's breakthrough. Yao Lao boasted a good foundation. With his accumulated strength and the demon saint essence blood, it was only natural for him to reach the first star of the Do Sheng class. Xiao Yan's group quietly disappeared from the Falling Star Pavilion on the 2nd day after Yao Lao's had broken through. Only a small group of upper echelons were aware that the Sky Mansion Alliance was retaliating against the Hall of Souls. The Burial Mountain Range was located at the intersection between the western and southern regions of the Central Plains. Due to its terrain, this place contained an extremely dense, dangerous aura. That dark aura was mixed with a rich corpse scent because most of the people within a 500-kilometer radius were buried in this place. Hence, this Burial Mountain Range was a strange mountain range that was built with tombs. It was difficult to find any human figures under normal circumstances. No one would be willing to stay in a place covered in a ghostly aura. Swoosh! The rushing sound of some wind suddenly appeared in the Burial Mountain Range's quiet sky. Rays of light flashed above as a couple of figures appeared in a flash on the top of a mountain deep within the mountain range. Their eyes were locked on the deepest part of the mountain range. There was a distortion in space hidden behind a large gray-colored tree. The Man Hall of the Tiangang Hall is in the deepest part of the Burial Mountain Range. However, they placed a spatial barrier here. They will detect it the moment someone enters. Yao Lao pointed at the deep region as he explained. Xiao Yan slightly nodded. He glanced at Zi Yan. She smiled and gently waved her sleeve. The space around the distortion suddenly fluctuated before it turned into an enormous spatial barrier that completely covered the area. This time around, there is no need to leave any survivors. Xiao Yan slightly raised his head. A dense expression appeared on his face. Hall of Souls, this revenge has finally come over a decade later. It isn't too late, is it? If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Continuing from the previous episode 558. Chapter 1487. Exterminating the Man Hall. Behind the somewhat distorted space was an enormous black piece of land. Some dense whiteness occasionally broke the surface of the ground. They were broken bones that revealed a strange chill. In the middle of this large area stood a quiet black hall. It seemed like an ancient ferocious beast as it crept across the ground. An extremely dark and terrifying feeling slowly fluctuated over this sealed space. There were countless, extremely large, and rough black chains extending from the large black hall. These chains were inserted deep into the ground. There was a cluster of black fog lingering over these chains. The fog vaguely formed a human shape. Some lusters occasionally flickered over the chains. Finally, they rushed into the black fog and caused the black fog to appear as though it possessed a form. This entire area appeared unusually quiet. A strange atmosphere covered it, giving one goosebumps. Crash! Such silence continued for an unknown period of time before 10 clusters of black fog stood up from the chains. The black fog shrank before turning into 10 cold-looking human figures. These people exchanged looks with one another before they moved and gathered together. Let's go. It is time for us to execute our mission. Hopefully, we will be able to bring back enough souls this time around. A human figure, who appeared to be the leader of this group, spoke in a hoarse voice. Tisk tisk, old Demon Lu's group launched a sneak attack against a couple of cities belonging to the Sky Mansion earlier. Not only did they manage to bring back enough souls, they were even heavily rewarded by the First Tianzun. This time around, we will also turn a couple of Sky Mansion cities into a bloodbath. One of people laughed in a sinister manner. Remember not to leave any survivors. That leader smiled. He slowly nodded and waved his hand. A dozen plus figures turned into black fog that hurried away from the hall with lightning-like speed. Bang! This group of black fog was about to charge out of the spatial barrier when the space around them suddenly stilled. It then violently collapsed. The dozen plus figures did not even manage to emit a miserable cry before they were crushed by the frightening spatial strength into nothing. Tear! The spatial barrier was slowly split apart as a big hole formed after this group of people were annihilated. A couple of figures slowly walked in from outside and stepped across the black soil. Toot! A sharp sound was emitted from the large hall the moment Xiao Yan's group stepped through the barrier. The black fog above those chains revealed many pairs of sinister eyes that observed Xiao Yan's group. How dare you barge into the territory of my Hall of Souls? You are asking to die. Sinister stern cries suddenly broke the silence. Many human figures stood up from the chains. Without waiting for any instructions, they turned into black lights that were accompanied by a dark wind as they charged toward Xiao Yan's group from all directions. A bunch of cannon fodder seems to happily be running around. Xiao Yan smiled after seeing them charge forward. He widened his mouth before a heated sea of fire shot out of his mouth. All of the black figures that entered within 100 feet of the sea of fire would vanish after 3 breaths. Those weaker individuals did not even manage to let out a miserable scream. The sea of fire spread. Those black figures hurrying over from behind finally froze their bodies in shock. Only then did they understand that this group was not here to kill themselves. Instead, it had truly come prepared. Bastard, how dare you act wildly in the territory of my Hall of Souls? You must be tired of living. All Tianans, capture them! A somewhat familiar cry was suddenly emitted from the hall as the sea of fire spread across the sky. Immediately, a dozen plus figures rushed out of the hall with lightning-like speed. Finally, they floated on the horizon. Their eyes were dark as they looked at Xiao Yan's group behind the sea of fire. Ha ha, you actually dare to bring out some mere dozuns? Old ghost Ju, it is better for you to personally step forward. Xiao Yan loudly laughed. His laughter was like thunder as it rumbled and spread through the hall. He took a step forward as he laughed and stepped across the 1,000-foot-wide sea of fire. He appeared in the air while his hand aimed at a group of Hall of Souls Tianans before abruptly clenching it. The space stilled as his hand was clenched again. Bang! After Xiao Yan clenched his hand, the bodies of the dozen-plus Tianans blasted into pools of blood. Even their souls had been shattered by that terrifying spatial pressure. With Xiao Yan's current 2-star Do Sheng strength, it was impossible for some Do Zun experts to obstruct him by even a little. Huh? See Heart Flame? Xiao Yan suddenly let out an exclamation after he clenched his hand. There was a figure remaining in that collapsed space. Moreover, this person contained an azure blue flame. Xiao Yan took a glance and recognized the origin of this flame. You are old man Mu Ji Yu? A teasing smile was lifted on Xiao Yan's face. He waved his hand and an invisible force pulled that human figure over. He threw a palm and shattered the blue flame lingering on that figure. A familiar figure appeared from within. Surprisingly, that figure belonged to old man Mu Ji Yu, who had repeatedly found trouble with Xiao Yan back then and had nearly snatched the pill-gathering champion's spot. Xiao Yan? Xiao Yan's heart was surprised. Old man Mu Ji Yu, on the other hand, was shocked to the point where he felt the impulse to wet himself. Ever since he had failed to snatch the 3,000 burning flame, he had been dispatched to the Man Hall. He had been collecting souls from outside of the Central Plains during this period of time. Although he had occasionally heard about Xiao Yan's soaring strength during this period of time, he did not probe for more information. After meeting Xiao Yan again, he finally understood that so-called soaring strength was much more frightening. Do Sheng. You have actually advanced to the Do Sheng class? Old man Mu Ji Yu looked at the young face and felt his voice tremble. Within a short few years, that member of the younger generation, who could only flee when he had been chased by him, had actually become this strong. Haha, it has been many years since I have met you and I have been feeling some regret. The Sea Heart Flame is also a heavenly flame. It is really a waste of a natural resource to leave it with you. Since I have met you again, please hand it over. Xiao Yan laughed without being polite. His hand on old man Mu Gu's head. A strange suction force erupted from his hand. He actually intended to forcefully pull the Sea Heart Flame out of old man Ji Yu Cha's body. Xiao Yan, you dare to barge into my Hall of Souls? You are really charging into hell to seek death. A furious roar was emitted from the hall while Xiao Yan was planning to forcefully extract the Sea Heart Flame. A black figure rushed forward. A 1,000-foot large dark black chain penetrated air like a black poisonous dragon as it hurried to Xiao Yan. A mere Ban Sheng dares to embarrass himself? Old ghost Ji Yu, you really think too highly of yourself. Xiao Yan shook his head slightly as that chain came. He flicked his finger and a low sonic boom formed from it. That enormous chain seemed to have suffered a heavy blow as it suddenly pulled back. Finally, it collided with the large hall. Come out! Xiao Yan flicked aside Saint Ji Yu's attack with a finger. He grabbed with his hand and a cluster of blue flame was forcefully extracted from old man Mu Gu's body. His aura had also become a little weaker at this moment. Clearly, he had received a fatal blow. Xiao Yan, I shall engage in an all-out fight with you. Old man Cha Gu's eyes turned blood red after the Sea Heart Flame was forcefully removed. His body began to swell. He clearly intended to self-destruct. The current you does not even possess the qualifications to self-destruct in front of me. Xiao Yan glanced at him with a cold and indifferent expression. He randomly waved his hand. A wave of indescribably frightening wind violently smashed into old man Mu Ji Yu before shattering his body into a bloody fog the next moment. This Hall of Souls Zun Jie, who had turned Xiao Yan into a miserable state back then, was not even given the chance to self-destruct at this moment. Xiao Yan glanced at the Sea Heart Flame in his hand after shattering old man Cha Ji's body. He opened his mouth and swallowed the flame. With his current strength, swallowing the Sea Heart Flame would no longer result in an increase in strength, but it was necessary to unleash the angry Buddha Lotus Flame. Although the life-transforming flame was powerful, it was still a fake heavenly flame. Only after possessing this Sea Heart Flame would Xiao Yan be able to truly unleash a 5-colored extermination fire lotus. Xiao Yan, this place will definitely be where you die today. Saint Ji Yu flashed and appeared in the air after Xiao Yan swallowed the Sea Heart Flame. He cried out in a dark and dense voice at the same time. I'm sorry. I plan to turn this place into a bloodbath today. Xiao Yan lifted his head and smiled at Saint Yu. Zi Yan had already disrupted any spatial fluctuations that occurred in this place. Even if these people possessed a spatial jade to summon the experts from the Han clan, they would not be able to use them. Because of a young fellow like you? Saint Yu ended up laughing in extreme anger after hearing those words. Xiao Yan was the first person in many years who dared to mention turning the Hall of Souls into a bloodbath. Of course, I am aware that you are not the one in charge here. Xiao Yan ignored Saint Yu. His eyes shifted to the large black hall as he said in a faint voice, that so-called First Tianzun, there is no need to continue hiding. I, Xiao Yan, will definitely turn this place into a bloodbath today. HMPH, what arrogant words. Do you really think that you can act as you like after reaching the Do Sheng class? It is an extremely easy matter for my Han clan to kill you. An icy cold snort was emitted from deep within the large hall after Xiao Yan's voice sounded. A dense, black fog erupted from within the hall. A skinny skeleton-like elderly figure slowly walked out with a dark, dense aura. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Continuing from the previous episode 559. Chapter 1488. First Tianzun. A small skeleton-like figure slowly appeared in Xiao Yan's sight as the black fog surged. He was wearing black robes, and his face appeared extremely shriveled. Both of his eyes were deep as two clusters of ghost flames danced within them. They emitted traces of an unusual aura. The legendary First Tianzun, of the Hall of Souls, you are finally willing to show yourself. Xiao Yan looked at the elderly figure before smiling and speaking in a soft voice. The First Tianzun slowly lifted his head. His shriveled face appeared exceptionally terrifying under the light as ghost flames danced within his eyes. A hoarse voice that gave one goosebumps quietly sounded. Xiao Yan, it is unexpected that you dare to deliver yourself to us. Originally, the clan had decided to let you live a little longer, but now that you have delivered yourself to us, I will help take this life of yours. It is still unknown just who will be the one taking the life of the other. Xiao Yan laughed. His eyes were unusually dark and cold as he looked at that shriveled old man. This old ghost was the one who had quietly intervened and rescued Saint Yu back then. Xiao Yan might not be able to defeat him had he revealed himself back then, but it was completely different now. Given Xiao Yan's current eyesight, he was naturally able to see through the strength of the First Tianzun. He was an intermediate 2-star Do Sheng. Thus, he was a little stronger than Xiao Yan even after Xiao Yan's strength soared. However, it was not difficult for Xiao Yan to make up for such a gap. Big brother, why do you need to utter so much nonsense to this young fellow? Just kill him and extract his soul. Tisk tisk. A Do Sheng soul can match the souls that this branch hall has collected over 100 years. Saint Yu's eyes flickered. Back then, he had suffered a great lose by Xiao Yan's hands, and he had formed a grudge because of that humiliation. Due to the other party's strength, he did not dare to get back at Xiao Yan, yet Xiao Yan dared to barge into the Hall of Souls at this moment. He needed to force him pay a great price no matter what. Ha ha, old ghost you really speak too many unnecessary words. Allow me to block him. Saint Yu's words had just sounded when the space in front of him became distorted. Yao Lao's body slowly appeared. He smiled as he looked at Yu. There was some ill intent within his eyes. Yao Chen. Yu's face sank as he saw Yao Lao appear in front of him. He was just about coldly ridicule Yao Lao when he suddenly sensed the faint pressure being emitted from Yao Lao's body. His expression immediately became ugly. You have actually broken through to the Do Sheng class? Yao Lao smiled slightly as he looked at Yu's somewhat distorted expression. He said, I was merely lucky. You launched a sneak attack against me the last time. This time, I shall return that debt to you. HMPH, do not think that I am afraid of you just because you have reached the Do Sheng class. I am only a step away from being a Do Sheng. Yu let out a cold snort, but he did not appear to be overly afraid. This place was the Hall of Souls territory. His fighting strength would be strengthened here. He pressed both his palms down. Monstrous black chi surged out of his body as the many large chains around the hall began to tremble at this moment. Wave after wave of black Do Chi surged out before finally entering his body. Yao Chen, I will see what right you possess to come to my Hall of Souls to collect debt. My Hall of Souls was able to capture you the last time around. This time, I will definitely capture and imprison you again. A black vapor surged. You seemed like a demon god that had descended to this plane. He lifted his head and roared at the sky. After which, a clang-clang sound could be heard. The black fog contained numerous black chains. They were accompanied by sharp cries as they rushed toward Yao Lao. That momentum appeared extremely frightening. Yao Lao faintly laughed upon seeing this attack, but he did not pull back. Do Qi erupted and he transformed into a bolt of lightning that collided with Gu. Xiao Yan also ceased uttering any unnecessary words to the First Tianzun. While Yao Lao was exchanging blows with Gu, his eyes swept over the experts from the Hall of Souls around him before he turned his head to the little fairy doctor's group a short distance away. He laughed. I'll leave the others to you. Although this man hall was tightly guarded with many Tianans present, the little fairy doctor and Qing Lin could fight an expert Ban Sheng at their current strength. Naturally, they were unafraid of the numerical superiority of the other party. If one included Qing Lin's triple jade green snake flower pupils, it was difficult to predict just who would gain the advantage of numerical superiority during the fight. HMPH, the expression of the First Tianzun, turned slightly cold upon seeing these battles erupt. The hands under his sleeves began to swiftly form a seal. Chi. The space around Xiao Yan fluctuated after the seal was formed. Many white figures flashed into Xiao Yan's eyes. The surrounding space had suddenly been filled by many sharp white bones that were piercing toward him with lightning-like speed. Mere child's play. Xiao Yan merely grinned when he saw the lightning speed of the piercing bones. He gently waved his sleeve as a powerful flame erupted from his body. A terrifying temperature melted those piercing bones in an instant. Bone Emperor piercing sky. The piercing bones scattered and an unusually cold cry suddenly sounded. The space above Xiao Yan's head hurriedly fluctuated. An enormous bone blade that contained a strange aura broke through the empty space. It shook as it hacked down at Xiao Yan. Swoosh! An unusual fluctuation scattered after this strange bone blade was swung down. It flew toward Xiao Yan with lightning-like speed. This is spiritual attack. Xiao Yan was slightly startled upon sensing this mysterious fluctuation. It was unexpected that the First Tianzun actually knew how to use a spiritual attack. Unfortunately, Xiao Yan had never been afraid of anyone when it came to a clash in terms of spiritual attack. Shatter! Xiao Yan's fist was clenched. His expression was calm as he threw a punch forward. There were no fancy movements nor fluctuations of Do Qi. Instead, spiritual strength erupted from Xiao Yan's brow when he threw his fist forward. Boom! An invisible spiritual palm wind rushed away from Xiao Yan's palm. It collided with that bone blade fluctuation in the air. The both of them annihilated each other. The First Tianzun's body flashed after seeing Xiao Yan easily shatter that spiritual fluctuation. He appeared under the 1,000-foot large bone blade in the sky. Black fog surged from his hands before the fog turned into a giant hand that grabbed the hilt of the sword. With a cold cry, the bone blade tore through space itself. It was accompanied by an extremely frightening sharp fluctuation as it was slashed down in fury. That bone blade is a little strange. It seems to be able to injure one's soul. The enormous bone blade rapidly grew in Xiao Yan's eyes. His hands suddenly pressed against empty air as the ground below quickly protruded. Nearly 100 lava pillars suddenly shot out and violently collided with the bone blade from all directions. HMPH, the First Tianzun, let out a cold snort after his attack was blocked. The enormous bone blade gently cut and the 100+ enormous magma pillars actually began to explode. Even the violent fire energy underground was forcefully suppressed by the blade. Xiao Yan, this bone blade of this old man has been created from the bones of tens of thousands of people. There are many unknown spiritual blades contained within it. Once this blade invades one's body, one will suffer the bitterness of being devoured by tens of thousands of souls. The bone blade in First Tianzun. His hands slashed horizontally as he spoke in a sinister voice. I think highly of you by using this to take your life. Unorthodox actions. Xiao Yan coldly laughed. He maintained the heavenly flame to guard his body. The whatever blade aura that could injure his soul was blocked. He immediately waved his hand as 5 clusters of flames appeared in front of him. Including the sea heart flame, which he had refined earlier, he had a total of 5 types of genuine heavenly flames. Since you place so much confidence in this broken bone blade of yours, I shall shatter it. Xiao Yan's hand seals changed with lightning-like speed. Following his changing hand seals, the 5 clusters of heavenly flames in front of him began to swell. Within a short instant, they turned into a wolf, leopard, dragon, etc. Enormous fire spirits. They floated in the sky and connected with each other. After which, they quickly formed an enormous flame formation. The 5-ring flame expelling technique. If 4 of the 5 spirits were formed by heavenly flames, its might could be comparable to a Tian-class Do skills. Currently, Xiao Yan had used a heavenly flame to form them all. The 5 types of heavenly flames had unleashed the 5-ring flame expelling technique to its limit. Buzz buzz. 5 types of fire spirits swiftly merged together. They turned into a 1,000-foot large fire ring in the blink of an eye. The fire ring wildly rotated. Even space itself had completely collapsed at this moment, appearing like ferocious large black mouth. HMPH, how arrogant. The First Tianzun smiled in a dense manner. Black cheese surged from within before turning into many ferocious-looking souls. Sharp miserable screeches continued to charge into the bone blade. As these numerous souls surged into it, bright red blood began to gradually appear on the dense, white surface of the bone blade. It appeared like a dark line of blood. Soul destruction / Following the strange trace of blood that appeared on the bone blade, a grave expression began to rise on the First Tianzun's face. He suddenly waved his hand and an enormous bone blade violently hacked toward the fire ring suspended in the sky. Break it! A flushed red expression surfaced on the First Tianzun's face. Space collapsed wherever the bone blade passed. The ground that was tens of thousands of feet under them was cut, forming a deep 1,000-foot wide gully. Rotate! Xiao Yan's hand seal changed as he sensed the ferocity of the First Tianzun's blade attack. The fire ring was wildly rotated. It appeared like a toothed plate that covered the sky. It emitted a buzzing sound and rushed forward with extreme speed. Finally, it violently collided with that huge bone blade without giving in. Clang! An earth-shaking sound immediately erupted over the space that had been sealed. Monstrous energy storms swept apart with uncontrollable speed. That black large hall completely collapsed at this moment. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Continuing from the previous episode 560. Chapter 1489. Defeat. Clang! A terrifying energy fluctuation crazily spread to the sky. Even the spatial barrier that covered this area had been shaken to the point where an intense ripple appeared. A faint crack line began to vaguely spread. Boom! The storm wildly shook at the point where the 2 attacks collided. The enormous ring of fire was pushed back as it became more faint, but it still rotated with great speed. In the end, it completely disappeared. A large bone blade flew backwards from the storm the moment the ring of fire had disappeared. It finally landed on a mountain. A frightening force instantly shattered the mountain into complete ruins. The bone blade weakly lay on the shattered stone. It was clear that both parties were unable to obtain much from this head-on collision. Both suffered some injuries. This bone blade is indeed a little mysterious. The large fire ray above Xiao Yan's head slowly disappeared. It returned to 5 clusters of flames that were swallowed by him. His eyes were a little startled as he looked at the dense, white bone blade. He was able to sense a quiet and strange fluctuation being emitted from the bone blade upon contact. This kind of ripple was extremely harmful to one's soul. If his heavenly flame wasn't guarding his soul, he would have ended up suffering. You are indeed worthy of being someone who has caused my Hall of Souls to repeatedly fail to capture you. You do possess some ability. The First Tianzun's eyes vaguely gained an additional solemnness as he looked at Xiao Yan. You have advanced from a 1-star Do Sheng to a 2-star Do Sheng within a short year. Even I have to praise you for that. If you are willing to join my Hall of Souls, your position will definitely not be inferior to me. Xiao Yan revealed a strange smile upon hearing these words. The relationship between him and the Hall of Souls had reached a point where neither would rest until the other perished, yet this old fellow actually trying to recruit him? Xiao Yan's strange expression was caught by the First Tianzun's eyes. This caused the First Tianzun to feel a little furious in his heart. He coldly laughed, "You arrogant fellow. In the future, you will understand just how powerful the Hun clan is across this continent. Someone like you is merely an ant-like existence. It is only too easy for my Hun clan to kill you. Is that so? Xiao Yan was noncommittal. The corner of his mouth was lifted into a faint arc as he said, "Before this, however, I will first finish you off." With just you? A strange night owl-like laughter was emitted from his mouth. His hand grabbed the mess below and an enormous bone blade flew up. It was stopped in front of the First Tianzun. His body moved before standing on the bone blade. Numerous ripples surfaced on the bone blade. The First Tianzun's body slowly merged into the bone blade. Man and blade merger. Xiao Yan involuntarily lifted his brow upon seeing this merger. Xiao Yan, I have bitterly trained for a couple of 100 years in order to merge my body with the Bone Emperor blade. This is the first time I will use it against an opponent. You will be used as a sacrifice for the blade. The enormous Bone Emperor blade floated in the air. The First Tianzun's face appeared on its dense, white body. Countless tiny blood scars slowly spread over the blade, appearing as though they were densely packed blood vessels. Swoosh! The First Tianzun's voice had just sounded when the Bone Emperor blade shook. Its existence quickly vanished. What great speed! Shock rose within Xiao Yan's heart the moment the bone blade disappeared. His body pulled back in reflex. The space in front of Xiao Yan fluctuated the moment he did so. A sharp blade suddenly slashed down. The blade was half a foot from Xiao Yan's head. Your reaction is indeed quite quick. A strange laughter was emitted from the Bone Emperor blade after the slash missed. The blade shook and an unusual cry was suddenly emitted. Countless blade shadows appeared in a flash. They wrapped around Xiao Yan in the next moment before the sharp blade glows aimed at the lethal spots around Xiao Yan. 6-joint body flowing ruler. Xiao Yan's expression became solemn as the sharp attacks from the Bone Emperor blade pressed down on him. He clenched his hand and the heavy Zan ruler appeared in it. The ruler shook as many ruler shadows formed a defensive net that wrapped around his body. Clang clang! Numerous sharp blade shadows poured onto the ruler figures like a storm, causing waves of sparks to erupt. The surrounding space would split and form a dark black crack each time the ruler shadows and the blade shadows clashed. Sizzle 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 sizzle! The Bone Emperor blade's attacks began to soar as it faced Xiao Yan's tortoise shell-like defense. This extremely frightening attacking speed caused a grave expression to flash across Xiao Yan's eyes. Just this attack alone would enable the First Tianzun to fight against advanced 2-star Dou Sheng experts. Even Yao Ming would have difficulty defeating him. The so-called blade and man merger was indeed quite mysterious. Bang! Xiao Yan focused his mind as he built his defense. A sense of danger suddenly rose within his heart at a certain instant as his head was suddenly turned. Boom! A glaring blade light forcefully tore through the ruler shadows around Xiao Yan the moment his head turned. A sharp cold ray of light slashed Xiao Yan's shoulder. The ray of light emitted a wave of light the moment it made contact with his body. That sharp blade light was hindered. Soon after, the light was forcefully parted by a blade as the Bone Emperor blade mercilessly hacked into Xiao Yan's shoulder. Clang! Sparks shot out the moment Xiao Yan was struck, but fresh blood did not flow from him. A couple of broken scale fragments shot out. Those scale fragments came from the Dragon Phoenix ancient armor hidden under his skin that had been summoned by him at this critical moment. Ding! The heavy ruler in Xiao Yan's hands was suddenly swung after the Bone Emperor blade struck him. It ruthlessly smashed into the Bone Emperor blade and sent the blade flying. He turned his head and looked at the faint bloody mark on his shoulder. His expression became slightly gloomy. It was the first time that his defensive formation had been forcefully broken after he had used the 6-joint body flowing ruler. From this, one could tell just how frightening the offensive speed of the First Tianzun was after both man and blade merged. What a tough body! The First Tianzun's body once again appeared on the Bone Emperor blade that had been sent flying. He strangely laughed as he looked at Xiao Yan and said, "Your speed is too slow. It is unable to catch up with me after I have merged with the blade." Xiao Yan was without expression. He nodded slowly but did not deny the strength of this First Tianzun. Just this attack could challenge an advanced 2-star Dou Sheng. This point alone allowed the First Tianzun to be proud. Hu! A long breath of air was slowly emitted from within Xiao Yan's mouth. His expression gradually became grave as both of his hands were placed together. After which, they swiftly changed and formed numerous complicated hand seals. Following the change in these hand seals, the spiritual strength on his brow suddenly broke from his body. It transformed into a huge illusionary figure that covered his body. Since you are fast, I shall be faster than you. Xiao Yan's hand slowly stilled. A cold smile was lifted on his face, Yellow Spring Divine Anger. Mo! Xiao Yan's mind moved as the large illusionary figure slowly widened its huge mouth. A terrifying spiritual attack suddenly swept out like a storm. Boom! This terrifying sonic spiritual attack disseminated through the air. The bodies of nearly 70% of the Hall of Souls experts in this area suddenly stiffened at this moment. A bang sounded as their bodies vanished. Both their souls and their physical bodies had been destroyed by this spiritual assault. Clang! The powerful spiritual attack was detected by the First Tianzun. Before he could do anything after just detecting it, that spiritual attack struck his body. The enormous Bone Emperor blade was sent flying at this moment. An elderly figure also flew out of the blade the moment this spiritual attack landed. A mouthful of fresh blood was wildly spat out. The First Tianzun was sent flying from the Bone Emperor blade by Xiao Yan. Yellow Spring Finger. Xiao Yan suddenly pressed with his finger after watching the First Tianzun get forcefully thrown out of the Bone Emperor blade. An enormous energy hand then appeared before it ruthlessly pressed onto the body of the First Tianzun. A frightening strength caused the First Tianzun's body to explode almost instantly. His arm turned into a bloody fog. Yellow Spring Palm. A roar and a finger turned the situation around, but Xiao Yan did not show any mercy. He once again slammed his palm forward as an enormous energy palm formed. It struck the First Tianzun's body. The First Tianzun's body was like a cannonball as it shot down from the sky and ruthlessly pierced the ground. A frightening wave forcefully rose from the land, forming a pit a couple of thousand of feet deep. In 3 strikes, the Demon Saint Hong Quan's 3 ultimate skills were unleashed by Xiao Yan with extreme familiarity. The Yellow Spring Divine Anger would harm one's soul while the Yellow Spring Finger and the Yellow Spring Palm would destroy one's body. Their combined might would only be described as terrifying. Xiao Yan floated in the sky. He slowly exhaled a breath of air as his eyes looked at the deep pit with some indifference. There was a little aura lingering at that spot. Clearly, the First Tianzun still had a couple of breaths remaining. Die! Xiao Yan's eyes were cold and indifferent. His finger aimed at the bottom of the deep pit from a great distance. He suddenly clenched his hand as the large hall suddenly emitted an extremely powerful energy ripple. The space in front of Xiao Yan became distorted. A figure slowly appeared. At the same time, an unusually powerful aura also swept over this sealed space. Xiao Yan, how dare you? Xiao Yan grinned after hearing the low and deep sound. He looked at the ghost-like figure. It seemed as though he did not feel that it was strange for this human figure to suddenly appear. His voice was calm as he said, "Deputy Chief of the Hall of Souls, are you finally unable to hold back any longer after hiding for such a long time? If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible." Continuing from the previous episode 561, Chapter 1490, Bloodbath. The human figure that had appeared in front of Xiao Yan was completely wrapped within a black fog. 2 unusually dark and dense eyes shot out of the fog, causing one's heart to feel a lingering fear. This mysterious person was surprisingly the Deputy Chief of the Hall of Souls, who had intervened when the Sky Mansion Alliance was formed back then. Xiao Yan, you are forcing my Hall of Souls to hand you the corpse of Xiao Zhan. The black fog slowly rippled as an unusually pale face was revealed. That face did not appear old. Instead, it appeared like a youth, but the tone that this youth used was unusually sinister. This allowed one to understand that this person's age was definitely not what he revealed on the surface. I have said that if anything happens to my father, I will hand the 2-Shi ancient god Jade to the GU clan. Xiao Yan faintly smiled. He did not feel the slightest fear. If one were to reveal even the slightest weakness to these people from the Hall of Souls, these people would grab onto it and one would never be able to recover. Even though he was constantly worried about Xiao Zhan's safety in his mind, he did not reveal such thoughts through his actions. Otherwise, the ones who would end up suffering would be his father and him. There is no need for it. You will perhaps not be given such an opportunity. I will personally bring you back to the Hun clan this time around and allow the both of you to be reunited. A cold and indifferent smile surfaced on the face of the Deputy Hall Chief. Originally, the clan was planning to allow you to live a little longer. However, It seems you do not treasure such an opportunity. Xiao Yan was noncommittal. He was too lazy to utter such nonsense to this deputy chief. With a wave of his hand, a hot flame suddenly shot toward the large pit below. He was planning on beating a dog when it was down, so he would finish off the First Tianzun in this place. The eyes of the deputy chief of the Hall of Souls immediately turned cold after he saw Xiao Yan attack to kill in front of him. He flicked his finger and a black vapor rolled out. The black vapor turned into a black dragon that swallowed the flame. After which, his large hand reached for Xiao Yan. Black fog shot out of his fingers in all directions. These black fogs transformed into 5 large chains that rushed toward Xiao Yan with a crashing sound. Do not think that you can act arrogantly just because you have broken through to the 2nd star of the Dou Sheng class. You are not even worth mentioning in front of me. A ferocity surfaced on the deputy hall chief's face. His strength was an advanced 3-star Dou Sheng, and he was only a little weaker compared to the 3 great dragon kings from the 3 dragon islands. This kind of strength could completely destroy Xiao Yan. However, Xiao Yan's expression continued to remain calm as the deputy chief of the Hall of Souls' sharp attack came. Xiao Yan did not intend to deal with this attack. Instead, he grabbed at the large pit below from a great distance. A large fire hand appeared in the sky and reached for the large pit below. You are seeking death. The eyes of the deputy hall chief turned gloomy when he saw Xiao Yan completely ignore him. He gave a dense smile as the black chains encircled Xiao Yan before suddenly tightening. Clang clang. The space around Xiao Yan suddenly fluctuated when the black chains were about to entwine around him. An extremely wild and violent chaotic spatial flow spread. A terrifying tearing force shattered those chains. Who is it? The sudden intervention caused the deputy hall chief to feel startled. His eyes hurriedly swept around as he cried out in a cold voice. You are also not worth mentioning in the eyes of this emperor. A cold voice slowly sounded after the deputy hall chief uttered those words. The deputy hall chief then saw a lovely well-proportioned figure suddenly appear in front of Xiao Yan. He could sense a relatively dense pressure emanating from this figure. Who are you? This is a matter of my Hall of Souls. Outsiders should not intervene lest you get implicated. The deputy hall chief's eyes were grave as he stared at the purple-haired figure and demanded in a deep voice. Is the Hall of Souls very great? Ziyan curled her lips upon hearing this. She appeared to hold great disdain. During the powerful and prosperous times of the ancient Void Dragon tribe, they were not even afraid of the Hun clan. Even less needed to be said about a subordinate faction of the Hun clan, such as the Hall of Souls. Xiao Yan has said that he will turn this place into a bloodbath today. Ziyan's pretty eyes swept over this deputy hall chief of the Hall of Souls. She faintly smiled and said, "Wouldn't it have been fine if you simply continued to hide inside? Why do you need to come out and seek death? How arrogant! I'm afraid that you do not have the ability to kill me." The deputy hall chief's expression was extremely ugly as he cried out in a cold voice. This was the first time in many years that he had heard such an obvious threat and felt looked down upon. Although he could sense that Ziyan was an expert who had reached the 4th star of the Dou Sheng class, he might not end up dead if they were to really fight. Xiao Yan glanced at this deputy hall chief before completely ignoring him. He maneuvered his hand, causing the large flame hand to pull the First Tianzun from the large and deep pit. At this moment, the First Tianzun's arm had exploded into a bloody fog as fresh blood covered his body. Even his soul had been wounded by the yellow spring divine anger from earlier. His sight had even become a little blurry since his physical body and even his soul had suffered severe damage. Xiao Yan's eyes calmly observed the First Tianzun, who seemed to be so badly wounded that he was unable to retaliate. His large fire hand pulled the First Tianzun over, but that dull old face suddenly revealed a renewed ferocity when the First Tianzun was less than 100 feet from Xiao Yan. His body started to swell. Boom! The swelling body was only midway done when Xiao Yan clenched his fist without expression. The large fire hand mercilessly crushed the First Tianzun. This frightening force caused the First Tianzun's physical body to burst apart. Swoosh! A black light suddenly shot away after the First Tianzun's physical body had exploded. It wildly shot toward the deputy hall chief of the Hall of Souls. Trying to escape? Xiao Yan let out a cold snort after noticing that the soul of the First Tianzun was planning to flee. When it came to such an expert, it was possible to change to another physical body and be reborn as long as one's soul was not destroyed. At that time, he would become a big threat again. Naturally, it was impossible for Xiao Yan to simply allow such a threat to escape, so he flicked his finger and the large fire hand turned into a fire web that wrapped around the First Tianzun's soul. How dare you! The expression of the deputy chief of the Hall of Souls sank upon seeing Xiao Yan's attempt to capture the First Tianzun. He lifted his hand and a black fog erupted from his sleeve in all directions. The black fog blotted out the sun and permeated the air as it swept toward Xiao Yan. You will not be able to attack in front of this emperor. Ziyan coldly laughed when this deputy hall chief attacked. Her hands formed a seal with lightning-like speed and a dark golden luster erupted from her body. In the blink of an eye, this luster formed a huge golden dragon. The dragon widened its mouth and acted like a large whale that was swallowing water. Within a couple of inhalations, the dragon had devoured the black fog even with the fog's extremely powerful erosion properties. The ancient void dragon tribe? The deputy chief of the Hall of Souls exclaimed after seeing the large golden dragon that Ziyan had summoned. Come back. Xiao Yan reached out with his hand after Ziyan blocked the deputy hall chief of the Hall of Souls. The fire web wrapped around the First Tianzun's soul. The high temperature radiating from the web caused the First Tianzun to let out a miserable screech. Soon after, the soul flew back and landed in Xiao Yan's hands. Xiao Yan looked at the cluster of black fog in the fire web in his hand. The black fog churned before gathering into the face of First Tianzun. There was an incomparable viciousness filling that face. Xiao Yan ignored the hatred of the First Tianzun. He shrank the fire barrier and formed a fire jade bottle. After which, he placed a spiritual seal onto it and tossed it into his storage ring. Since that fellow was the First Tianzun of the Hall of Souls, he would definitely be aware of many secrets. It might be possible to gain some information about the Hall of Souls' motive for gathering souls from his mouth. It is unexpected that you are even able to request the ancient void dragon tribe to help you. The deputy hall chief of the Hall of Souls involuntarily laughed in extreme anger after watching Xiao Yan seal the soul of the First Tianzun. A 4-star Do Sheng could be considered a top expert even within the Han clan. He had not expected Xiao Yan to be able to invite such an expert this time around. However, my Hall of Souls is not a place that a young fellow like you can turn into a bloodbath just because you wish to. The deputy hall chief of the Hall of Souls suddenly pulled back. At the same time, a silver jade token appeared in his hand. He shattered the token and an extremely dense spatial fluctuation began to rapidly spread, but he was stunned to find that a spatial tunnel did not appear after the spatial token was broken. The spatial energy fluctuated for a moment before slowly disappearing. I have already used the chaotic spatial flow to surround the space in this area. No spatial ripple can be emitted. Hence, you will not be able to summon any reinforcements even if you use a spatial jade token. Ziyan spoke with a smile as she mocked the deputy chief of the Hall of Souls, whose expression gradually became ugly. The deputy hall chief's face twitched. His heart finally sank. This time around, Xiao Yan's group had really come prepared. The Hall of Souls has been chasing after both my teacher and me for so many years. It is now time to repay that debt. Relax, I will tear down the heaven, earth, and man halls one at a time. Xiao Yan's eyes were filled with a dense promise as he looked at the deputy chief of the Hall of Souls and spoke. Xiao Yan, the only mistake that my Hall of Souls has made during these years is failing to kill you early on. This has allowed you to gain strength, but you should not be happy. Although my Han clan cannot attack you because of the agreement between the ancient clans, it will not be long before the agreement will not be able to restrain my Han clan. At that time, you will discover that my Han clan far exceeds your imagination. The deputy hall chief of the Hall of Souls inhaled a deep breath of air. He looked at this devastated space. Even half of the large black hall had collapsed. A large number of the experts from the Hall of Souls had been lost during the energy wave that had been emitted from the earlier battle. This time around, the losses of the Man Hall were incomparably miserable. At that time, your Xiao clan and the Sky Manyan alliance will be completely eliminated. The deputy hall chief of the Hall of Souls laughed a dense laugh as his body suddenly exploded. Black fog spread and forcefully tore the chaotic spatial flow apart. His body moved, shot into the tear, and disappeared. This person had abandoned everyone within the Man Hall. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible.